Hi, this time I'm going to continue with my video from last week where I talked about undead that drained energy in role playing games using some legends, folklore, and myths to serve as inspiration for adventures and campaigns. I highly recommend that you watch that video, otherwise, this video isn't going to make too much sense. So, in my last video, I talked about Asmund and Aswith, and as you may remember, I thought it somewhat odd or curious that Asmund had taken a horse, a dog, and some meat with him when he was going to entomb himself alive with the corpse of his friend. Well, I guess it would make a bit of sense that you would take a horse to get to the tomb. Maybe it was somewhat far away. But to take a dog, why? To protect yourself, perhaps, from animals or something? And that piece of meat, because supposedly he was taking the meat so that he wouldn't starve, but it doesn't make sense. If you're going to kill yourself inside that tomb, why would you take that meat over there? So I started playing around with the idea and thinking, and remember, this is probably going to serve to create an interesting adventure or perhaps even an entire campaign. Because what if Asmund was trying to perform some sort of weird ritual or ceremony to bring back Aswith, to create some sort of etheric revenant out of Aswith. Maybe you needed a horse, a dog, and that meat to feed this newly created aberration. And for those of you that do not know what an etheric revenant is, I guess you could basically refer to it as an artificial vampire. It's an individual that through some ritual processes he is transformed at the moment of death into this sort of vampiric entity. The corpse is prepared like the mummies in Egypt or in other parts of the world, like Peru. They have this corpse that is preserved and treated with different ceremonial substances to serve as sort of like a house for this entity. So different acolytes and servants would go there and bring perhaps fruit or even their own bodies so that this entity could feed from them, like draining their life force. And there are different myths about how these entities become so desperate and start to drain energy from those around them. Perhaps next week I will talk a bit more about that, because that also serves great as an excuse for some adventures and campaigns. So I remember, I think I read it once, that they became so desperate, these entities, that sometimes they actually fed upon urine and human waste. So I was thinking, what if Asmund was trying to create an etheric revenant out of his friend? What if he took his friend's corpse, he was doing some sort of weird things, and he had that meat, or even the horse and the dog, to offer those animals and that piece of meat to his friend as sacrifices, but something went wrong. And as you may remember from the other story last week, maybe Aswith was trying to feed upon Asmund. He became a victim of his own creation. So I think you can actually create a really cool campaign around this idea. Because, for example, what if the characters are fighting against this very ancient mummy that is being transported around different museums around the world, and this strange mummy is actually feeding from the people that go to visit the museum and starts to cause the death of many people, and the heroes have to stop this mummy of sorts, this etheric revenant. And maybe there's like a group or a sect that is opposing the player characters. So I think this is a great excuse to have a somewhat lengthy campaign as the characters chase this mummy, or perhaps in a group of mummies around the world trying to stop them. It will feel a bit like Bram Stoker's Dracula in a way. So really an awesome idea to play around with that concept of the etheric revenant, and perhaps you could even combine it with the story of Asmund that Aswith? What if the characters first stumble upon this ceremony that Asmund was doing, or actually has accomplished, to bring back Aswith as this parasitic entity, and then everything starts to unravel. And this theme is, or this plotline, could be applied to different genres. I could see it, how it could be played in modern role-playing games, or even science fiction role-playing games. What if they are transporting this sort of like a mummy across planets, and when the characters arrive they just missed it and they have to chase it around the universe? Maybe there are some sort, they are have been hired to do so, or they have some personal reason to chase around this strange entity. But as you can imagine, it can also apply to classic fantasy, any type of role-playing game. So I definitely think it's a good idea to build a campaign around this concept, or even if you just want like a short campaign or even a single adventure, it could be worth it. Well, I'll see if this week or the next I can bring out a continuation of this video, but because I think that there is another way to handle this as a sort of campaign, basing it on a popular vampire case or report, so to speak. Well, thanks for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.